welcome a new gentleman as part of the Bleacher Brothers fraternity. I mean, it's great, and I've said this forever. I've been doing broadcasting here in South Florida for it's almost 44 years now, and it never ceased to amaze me with all the people. I was out at the park last night, Pompano Municipal Tennis Center, where
Okay.
many years ago I saw a 14-year-old Naomi Osaka. And I
Yeah.
remember asking the pro there, Eddie Sposa, I'm saying, who the hell is that girl, man? She looks like she's pretty good. And he said, that's Naomi Osaka. She's going to be all right. She's ranked like 250 in the world already. And of course, she went on to tremendous heights and didn't necessarily complete what was expected of her or what seemed to be on the table for her because she had various things going on in her life. Is back in action right now. But
Yeah.
always surprised me that with all of the attention, and the courts were packed last night, couldn't even get on there when we wanted to, that was paid to tennis here and all the participants. It was rarely discussed in any form of media. I mean, you'd see the interviews with some of the superstars that live here, and occasionally when they won a tournament, but you couldn't really bring it up as a sports talk topic. But without people, you could actually hear the thud as people were punching the radio off and turning off the channels. And it always amazed me because tennis is so popular here and you can play it year round. We welcome to the show and we welcome the Bleacher Brothers.
Thank you.
This is exciting. Matt Pressman, who has Florida Tennis Magazine and has been the owner of this publication, outstanding publication, goes back to 1991 for many, many years. Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks so much. We wanted to introduce you to our Bleacher Brothers audience here today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's a pleasure. It's cool to hear you're a player. I got to hear more about that. I guess you still hit the ball at least once a week or so, or
I try. I mean, it's hard to find opponents that you
yeah,
can beat at this stage of my life. So I have a guy I've been playing like 20 years, but his game has deteriorated so badly, Matt, that it's kind of sad, actually. I don't know how you handle that when you're playing a friend and his game has just fallen off a cliff and you're scoring on shots. I mean, these are lollipops I'm serving up there, and he's hitting them into the bottom of the net. But any guy. I mean, it's true, right? You found this to be true.
yeah.
If a guy has real tennis form, he's going to beat the snot out of somebody like me that just manufactured a game.
Now, did you play high school tennis, or did you
No,
play?
no, tennis.
No.
Funny, it's funny. It was kind of taboo. I grew up in New York. We were just talking with Dan Grunfeld about that, and basketball was
Yeah.
a game of choice, and tennis. You felt sorry for the guy that was playing tennis because it was something that you only played when your girlfriend demanded that you spend some time with her. So all the other guys were playing basketball and having a blast, and we'd look over and see like, oh, there's poor Bob over there. He's hitting tennis balls, and that was in the day of the wooden racket. And then the game has
Yeah.
advanced dramatically since then. One of the things that I remember though left an indelible impression was reading an article in Sports Illustrated, and there were some quotes from John McEnroe, and McEnroe was beefing that tennis players, for some reason, weren't really considered athletes. And
Yeah. It's
when you watch the game today, my God, you talk about evolution, man.
crazy athletes. Yeah, I'll tell. Well, I was in New York City for about 20 years, and I played some street basketball. I actually played basketball growing up and tennis, so I had those two sports, and I feel like they complement each other really well, basketball and tennis. But it was so much easier playing pickup basketball in New York City than it was playing tennis. I had to play under the FDR Bridge,
Yeah, yeah,
wait
never
for
any
court
court.
for like an hour,
Yeah.
pay almost $200 to get on a court at Central Park. So New York wasn't really cut out for tennis players. At least the city wasn't. I mean, obviously where McEnroe came from, it's out in Long Island. He trained with Harry Hopman. It was a different thing. But yeah, I mean, I think tennis players get a bad rap in terms of being good athletes, but I find most of the time at a higher level, at a serious junior player level or college tennis level, most of the guys have played baseball or basketball or played some other sport growing up. So yeah, I agree. It's a weird thing with tennis, like that it doesn't get the right rap that it deserves in terms of athletics. Yeah.
Well, would you say this is the tennis capital of at least the United States? Because I mean, going back, you had the Bolletary Academy, of course, now IMG,
Yeah.
and the players they developed there. It was remarkable. If you watch any kind of history or documentary about Nick Bolletary or the academy that he started, but it's going on all over the place. I mean, as I mentioned, my buddy and I used to go out there. A couple of fat guys were going out there playing tennis at the Pompano Municipal Tennis Center, which wasn't necessarily a learning ground for top pro players. There's Osaka out there uh,
Yeah.
hitting balls. I mean, Seminova is, from here, Plantation, I guess Florida has developed a lot of pros. You had the Chris Everett, or her father's academy. She has something
Sure,
going now in Boca Raton.
sure.
Is this the hottest place for a tennis player to come,
It's
if
the
they want to?
crown jewel of American tennis is what I call it, Florida. I mean, I was fortunate in that I went down to Saddlebrook Resort, which is in Tampa. So that was called the Harry Hopman Tennis Academy. Harry Hopman was once McEnroe's coach, had a academy in Port Washington, New York as well. So there's a connection there, an Australian. And at that time, you had Andy Roddick going there, Marty Fish, you had Pete Sampras, Jennifer Capriati, and the big competitor was Bollettieri, right? So that when the Hopmans guys played the Bollettieri guys, that was like the ultimate competition at a junior level, which is when I was playing more seriously, let's say. Nowadays, I was just looking at the top 10 for both women and men. Right now, there's four American players in the top 10, right? You've got Emma Navarro, you've got Madison Keys, obviously with the huge win in Australia, Jessica Pegula and Coco Gauff. Three of the four are from Florida. So it gets even crazier with the men. So there's only two male players who are American in the top 10. Tommy Paul and Taylor Fritz both have residences in Florida, which is crazy. So you've got so many players who are big time American players from Florida, or at least came through Florida at some point, either in the juniors or at the academies, that it's the place for tennis by far.
Yeah, I mean, there were other academies, and a man's name escapes me. He actually had Serena there for a little while, and a couple of other.
Oh, Rick Macy. Rick
Rick,
Macy. Yeah,
yeah,
he's here in Boca Raton. Yeah, and he's right near Chris Everett Academy. Yeah,
I think he might have
yep.
given
And
me a lesson one time when I was doing some kind of radio promotion, and naturally, he immediately sized up the situation and decided to move on. But no, and it's absolutely great. I wanted to talk about this Madison Keys story because it's a very touching story. Also, I mean, this is a woman that never won a slam before. I mean, obviously, the last two rounds, she mows down Swiatek, who maybe
yeah,
hasn't been quite as invincible as she was a year or so ago when she rattled off like 30 some odd consecutive match victories, and then Sabalenka, who had
yeah,
destroyed Paula Badosa in the previous round and was playing at the top of her game, going for the three-peat at the Australian. But even the players she met in the earlier rounds, I mean, this was one of the more remarkable runs to a championship we've seen maybe in any sport.
yeah. It's been an incredible run for Madison Keys, and I think I have a theory on this, like an interesting theory. I think, there's actually two Americans, both who have lived here in Florida. One is Madison Keys, who just ran through an incredible tournament, the Australian Open. Another one is Danielle Collins, right,
Yeah,
who's from St. Pete, who won the Miami Open and then won the Charleston Open right after that. Both kind of edging around 30 years old at the time, sort of already kind of past their prime. Everybody writes them off. And these two American players, within almost a year of each other, have just come out of nowhere to do incredible things. And I think what it speaks to for both of these players, and I'll get to Madison in a sec, is that as a tennis player, and because you play yourself, when you put pressure on yourself, you tend to get tight, play so well. I think both of these players are playing loose. They're relaxed. No one expects a thing at either of them. And all of a sudden, Madison Keys, who everyone sort of wrote off. I mean, she hits a huge ball. She's a great player, but her winning a major at this point, no one would have guessed it.
very
And I
improbable.
think just like Danielle Collins did in Miami Open here in Florida last year, she just came out of nowhere because no one expects it, and there's no pressure. So pretty amazing.
Collins had fared very well in several big tournaments, although she was getting a raspberry from the crowd
Oh yeah,
in Australia. I guess she was playing an Australian girl who I hadn't heard of before, and they were really getting on her. And then she more or less, flashed the crowd, some kind of ugly
yeah,
gesture, and and completely different dispositions and compositions, but both
yeah.
to their game and to their personalities, Collins and Madison Keys.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny to watch Collins because I was really rooting for her, thinking if there's anybody from America that comes out of nowhere, it's Danielle Collins, not
Yeah,
Madison Keys. And I even thought that because she's such a firecracker and she's so fiery on the court, and she got up in the fans' kind of face with her whole, not just the gesture, but afterwards
like
in the,
kiss
in the
my
press
ass,
conference.
basically, was what you were saying. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty wild to see the whole thing. But yeah, I think. Look, man, I think Danielle Collins still has a lot left. She was supposed to retire at the end of last year, and she's
Yes.
back in it this year. And I think she's someone to take a look at. Look, we've got a really big tournament coming up here in Florida, the Miami Open. She could defend her title coming up, soon. What's going to happen? Will Madison Keys be there? Will she be a threat? Coco Gauff is also from Delray Beach. Jessica Pegula is from Boca Raton. Arena Sabalenka has a place in Miami. So you think about it across the board, there's so many players from Florida that could take the crown here in Florida in the Miami Open. And so I just think that the Australian was interesting to watch. And it was so cool seeing Madison run through the tournament like that. And I think it's going to be fun to watch women's tennis this year and just see who really rises to the top. I thought it would be Coco last year. It just
She
didn't work
started
out.
out great this year. She won like, something like 18 matches out of 19 or something at the beginning of the
Yeah,
season.
I think Brad Gilbert sort of left the camp, and
Yeah.
and that was
I'm a
I
big
think.
Gilbert fan. I don't know how you feel about him, but, I always liked Brad Gilbert.
Me too, huge fan. I read the book Winning Ugly, and I've always loved his game. He got to four in the world. Someone who really made the most of his own talent. I mean, which was good, but nothing near number four in the world.
No.
So I thought what he did with Agassi was incredible, and I think what he was doing with Coco Gauff was great. It remains to be seen whether Coco will sort of go places this year. But she's such a great player. She's three in the world right now, and I think she's the of all the Americans in Florida, and there are quite a few of them right now. Like I was saying, she's somebody I would keep an eye out for sure.
All right, we have to run. It's been a pleasure. We welcome you and looking forward to some tennis conversation here
Thank you
on
so much. Looking
uh,
forward to it.
Pressman, Florida Tennis Magazine. Thank you, my friend. Thanks for joining us and welcome aboard.
You got it. Thanks so much, man. Great to be here.
All right, a lot of fun today being with you guys. Dan Grunfeld, extremely interesting story. Matt Pressman, Florida Tennis Magazine, comes on board here with the Bleacher Brothers. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff De Forrest. We will catch you next week. Should have a good time. Mike Westhoff, longtime coach in the National Football League, going to join us, and one of the more astute football analysts. Will be very appropriate. We've tried to have a little moratorium here before we got to the week before the Super Bowl. But if you were going to dissect the game and/or the NFL, nobody better. He has a book out about his many NFL experiences called "Figure It Out," which you can buy online. And he'll be joining us next week on the next edition of Conversations. For Dan Grunfeld, Matt Pressman, and Toby, our producer, I'm Jeff De Forrest. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on next week's edition of Conversations with Jeff De Forrest.